Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. How are you, Seth?
I'm fabulous. It's a beautiful day. We're living in Victoria. We're living a dream.
Beautiful... Well, yeah.
I haven't figured out whose dream it is
I'm still
yet.
missing France, for crying out loud.
Oh, man. Yeah. I'm missing France since 1990. It was the
That's
last
how
time
long
I
you
was there.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a long miss.
It's a long time.
Yeah,
I think
it
things have
misses you
changed.
Too.
Is the Eiffel Tower still there?
No.
They got rid of
converted
that?
it into like a Krispy Kreme donut shop.
Oh, nice.
No, it's still there.
Okay.
It's still there.
Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah,
They're crispy.
Victoria, BC, beautiful weather. It's summertime.
I
was
in the
away when
garden.
it was all raining. So
Yeah,
that was
you
good.
brought sunshine back.
Yeah, of
and
course.
It's now
Sunshine
the time
follows
to
me
be putting plants out in the garden.
Yes,
That's what
plant it.
I'm spending all my extra time right
So
now.
I think I'm going to actually plant a garden. We have a beautiful garden that someone else planted
Yeah.
and someone else take care of. But I want to do an actual garden, like grow carrots or something like that. It's, food security is something I care about. And it's when you get out into the garden and touch your hand in soil, there's that whole grounding component of it.
Well, yeah, we're all electrical beings.
Yeah,
You touch the ground, you're
yeah.
instantly grounded.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how far I'm going to get, but I'm going to build it.
Yeah.
And my brother did it up in Grand Prairie, or is doing it up in Grand Prairie, and it's kind of interesting. I think more and more people should look for that. Good for food security.
Well, yeah.
And you actually grow real food.
I've been growing things for a couple of years now, but this is the first year I've done things from seed.
Oh.
And it's a totally different experience for me. I'm learning so much.
Well, you can buy seedlings or seed starts from the Fed Urban Agriculture down on Bay Street there.
I didn't know that, but that's good to know.
They're starting a market. So next Wednesday, I think the market starts.
Oh.
And I should know because I'm a director, but I think they're doing it, I think one day a week, I think Wednesdays, or it might be Wednesdays and Saturdays or something.
Well,
but I'll report back.
Since we're shamelessly plugging and talking about markets, I am starting the Mid-Chosen Farmers Market this Sunday.
Oh, cool.
So you can
is it a new market?
No,
you're starting
it's
to go
the
there?
Mid-Chosen. I'm starting to participate now.
Participate. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I'm...
And what, you're going to sell coffee?
Just whole bean coffee.
Oh, yeah,
just
I love
beans, no fluids.
I've got your beans because we used to buy an American bean and now we buy your beans.
What? For home?
Yeah, for home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, next time you need beans, just let me know.
I will let you know.
And I'll just hook you up, brother.
You hook me up.
I'll hook you
buy
up.
a case or
I'll
something.
hook Dave up too. Oh,
Dave
speaking
Thompson.
of Dave,
You get the segue.
these are the Daves I know.
Dave, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. It's good to see you guys again.
It's good to
Yes,
see you
real
too.
great.
So Dave Thompson is a Victoria City Councillor, among other things. I introduced you this morning to Jackie at the front as City Councillor Dave Thompson, but everybody's more than just that title, right?
Yeah. I'm part of the Tired Fathers Club.
The Tired Fathers Club. How old are your kids?
Well, they're getting on now. Like I've got one in high school and two in university.
Oh,
Going to
wow.
have three in university next year.
Oh my!
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're all being
crazy.
university because you've got three.
They're all except the dog. The dog's
The
at
dog.
home. She's the baby now.
The dog's not going to university.
She's not
right?
going.
That's
She failed
that's
out.
the cheap one.
She
then.
failed out.
And your wife and life partner, Diana Gibson, she's
a busy woman.
She's a busy woman. She
Yeah.
just got elected
She's-
to
Yeah,
the
she's-
provincial
yeah,
government.
She's in provincial government. She's the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation, which includes trade and tariffs.
Wow.
Ooh,
So
those
she's
are
just
the
out of
two
the smoke into the
keywords.
fire.
Yeah. It's a big job. She's good at it.
Yeah, I think she would be. I mean, I dealt with when she's on the community. I always
Social
planning council. Everybody asked me about that, and I could never get the name right. Community Social Planning Council.
Yeah.
So I did work with her for a number of years and think she's amazing. So she is doing a wonderful job, but it's got to be, like you said earlier, it's like 7 a.m. till 11 at night.
Yeah. It's very full on. But she seems to thrive on that.
Yeah.
I think it would reduce me to a pile of ashes, but
Paul,
she's doing great.
Has she been down to Mar-a-Lago yet?
First class.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we
On the
talked
truck
about
jet?
we talked about is she going to be doing trade missions to the United States because she is lining up European and Japanese and other trade missions. But
Okay.
I guess she's intending to go.
Well, at
I'm
some
kind
point,
of
depending on what happens, right?
I'm kind of wondering about that. Yeah.
How much
Whether it's a
influence
good
does
idea.
the provincial ministry have versus the federal ministry? Like
Yeah.
how are they coordinating, or are they?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the federal government is got constitutional responsibility for trade, but all the provinces are kind of on side with this Team Canada approach, and so the response to Trump's trade war is everything from improving internal trade within Canada, knocking down those
which
interprovincial
is
trade
huge.
barriers to strengthening our domestic economy and local businesses and that sort of thing. So she's very involved in that. And then there are, as I said, trade missions where we actually have folks, BC has folks on the ground in other countries to try to promote our
Buy
export
Canada
businesses.
and-
Yeah. You should have her on this show.
Yeah, actually,
That'd
you
be
know what?
nice.
We will.
Yeah.
100%. I just figured she's too busy.
She is,
I
but
mean,
she does-
I have
yeah,
her
she has
text
to make
message.
choices.
I have her bill. I can text her too.
Do it, Calen.
Okay, we're gonna have her on.
I'll put
for
in
sure.
a good word.
Yeah, put in a good word. Tell her.
If you could get
Yeah.
us in,
Yeah,
with
get
your
us in,
wife,
get us
that
in,
would
get
be
us in.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for sure, especially the trade thing is a big thing.
Mhm.
Economic development. I mean, that's close to our hearts. Obviously, we're in a industry that needs every bit of help we can get. Our average margin is like 3%. So, yeah, anything we can do, especially in this climate. So, just before we get into all the meat of it,
Mhm.
last time you were on here, you're running for city council,
Mhm.
like just leading up to the
Yeah.
election. So, how was your learning curve getting into that, and how's it been going?
Well, unfortunately, I won, so I got in. And,
now, were you
there's a lot
like
of
you were
work.
always hoping to win,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But were you
There's-
surprised, or were you just like, okay,
well,
I won?
as a first timer, I
Yeah.
was kind of thinking maybe I have to run a couple times to get my name out there
Yeah.
and win. But I don't know. I campaigned for a long time.
Yeah,
Had a lot of conversations at the door and in shops and other places. Listened to people, and I'm really lucky because my own personal values and the way I want to see the city evolve is pretty much in sync with the population of Victoria.
yeah.
And so I could just say to people, this is what I want.
What do you think?
Are you interested in that? And apparently they are.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So the reception was good.
Reception was good.
Yeah.
And it's been a big learning curve. Holy smokes, the variety of stuff we have
Like,
to
would
deal
you
with.
have known that going in, or you would have maybe thought it? But it's probably a lot worse.
I
Than,
thought there
Yeah.
would be quite a variety, and
Yeah.
I kind of like the municipal part of government.
yeah.
And I had worked for municipalities before. But yeah, everything from, approving, skyscrapers to, what do we do with this dog that's a danger to society?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's
we have to
a
make
scope,
some really awful decisions
Oh.
about things like that. And
Yeah.
yeah. I
About
know.
dogs?
Yeah. Very
Really?
very sad things happen.
Oh,
Yeah.
And that goes to the council. And
Stuff
we're
like
can-
that goes to
elevate,
council.
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Everything. Yeah.
Now-
soup to nuts.
On the house, because I'm friends with good friends with Crystal Loudon. Obviously,
Yeah.
that was her, I guess her campaign finance person or something. I don't know. I did an okay job.
Financial agent.
Oh, financial agent. That's
There you
right.
go.
I didn't even know what it
bankrolled
was.
I
it.
when
saw
was
your
asked. I
name
said,
in
yeah.
tiny print at the bottom of all her ads.
You bankrolled someone
No, it wasn't.
who's
I had
in
nothing to do
power
with it.
now,
I mean,
and now
I
you...
donated to all the good city councilors that we've got. I donated to them all.
Is that how you're going to be mayor?
No,
Calen,
I'm not being mayor, man. Going through that process eliminated any chance of any idea of running for any office ever. It was just like, and then the audit process, and then all that stuff. I was just like,
You thought
Oh,
running a
yeah.
restaurant was
Yeah.
hard. Oh my god.
well, you guys' election. I guess you're a year away, or you 2 years, a year and a half away.
Yeah, it's going to be a year
It's
and a
like
half.
20
and we're going to be
November
we're going to be
20,
looking for financial agents.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
People who
Wow.
are really good with the numbers, the spreadsheets.
Yeah, it's like new
Who's
number,
got
who
the
dis?
shallowest pockets in City Hall that I can fill?
Yeah. So are you running again?
I'll be running again. I think
Awesome.
that all of the incumbents are going to run again.
Awesome.
Is my
Yeah.
understanding. There may be a couple people who decide at the last minute, but
Yeah.
it looks like everybody's running.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think one of the more complicated, but from your background, I probably would think it might have been easier for you is just the housing stuff, like
Mhm.
the zoning changes, all that kind of stuff. Like your background, you were a lawyer previously, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've done some research and writing prior to getting on council on the housing issue. It's a big topic. You know, everything from the sort of street level of homelessness, right through the sort of affordable housing, supportive housing, the below market housing, the market housing, and we need a lot more of it.
Yeah.
We've got young people. We probably talked about this in the last one, but we've got young people, young families who can't afford to live here, who are trying to commute to their downtown jobs from out in Souk, maybe some of them up in Duncan, coming over the Malahat every day. We've got people who are, you know, stuck in their apartment because it'd be $1,000 more per month for them to move out to a bigger one. You know, we've got like a family of 4 living in a 1-bedroom.
Yeah. That's actually something that's not talked about often.
Yeah.
Right? Is the underhoused, I guess would be called.
Underhousing is a serious problem. So we're working on it. We're working hard on it. And we hit the ground running when we started. So the majority of council is very pro-housing. And we've tried to push it along. Right now, we're going through an interesting process, the official community plan. So you start talking about stuff like that and zoning bylaws, people start getting really drowsy and fall asleep. But it is literally the blueprint for the city.
Yeah.
It's a plan for how the city's going to develop. And what we're trying to do is give more housing opportunities in more neighborhoods. So right now, you know, you see a whole lot of big apartment buildings downtown, Harris Green, ones in James Bay from the 1970s and 1980s. We'd like to see a sort of a more gentle density emerging throughout the city.
Yeah.
Lots more.
So that aligned with transportation hubs and things like that, or is it even loosening? And I guess that's the thing with, you know, when you look at the bylaw and single family zoning. And I have a very good friend who's a developer, and he has some opinions on it, and also whether it is a housing shortage or an affordability. And I mean, it could be both, right? But you know, when you remove the zoning process, and just do blanket zoning, all of a sudden someone who's got say they have $1 million house or an $800,000 house that's a little bit larger, and you can actually have maybe you can have a townhouse there. All of a sudden now has a $2 million property, right? And he had some thoughts on the existing zoning bylaws that are in place already. I think it's schedule, is it G, where you can convert an existing multi-story house into suites much more affordably, and without tearing it down and rebuilding. So that was one of our first. In fact, that was the first motion that I think was brought on council, and I brought it, and I think Councillor Lutton seconded it. It had a whole bunch of pieces, and one of those was to allow for more of these home conversions that you're talking about. You can see some of these places. Fairfield's a great place to go and look at these big, beautiful older homes. And then you'll see out front, there's 4 little mailboxes out there, 5 or 6 little mailboxes, and they've been divided up. So the city's been allowing that for a while, but it's been kind of restricted. Like, it has to be homes of a certain age, that's right. It was
size,
like before 1980
and that
or
sort of
something.
thing. Yeah. We've it was earlier than that, but we've basically we brought a motion to sort of say let's open that up. Let's increase the opportunities for that, because you look at the average bungalow, you could probably add, if it's got good bones, add a second story onto it, divide it up into 3 or 4 suites. Then you're not tearing down places, sending all that stuff to landfill.
Well,
climate component.
All that concrete.
So did you guys loosen that up? Is it more?
That is on its way.
Yeah.
So staff said, and we come up with these great ideas on council, but staff actually know what they're talking about. So they said, yes, sounds great. What we're going through right now is we're trying to figure out the bones of the city, the structure of the city. Once we've got that right, then we work on those smaller pieces.
Right. So it's
and
coming.
Let those go ahead. It is coming.
Yeah.
So if you're able to keep those old character homes, I mean, it does way more than keep building material out of Heartland, but it keeps character in your neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
as well. Because if you tear down some of those houses, I mean, if someone can't afford to be in their old family character home in Fairfield, and they have to
the
sell,
cost of building,
someone's going to buy it and tear it down and put up a new big modern house for one family.
Yeah, and it is really about those owners and what they want to do. So what you find is that the heritage homes that people have kept up and kept them beautiful and worked on them, and there's a lot of work that goes into some of these.
Oh my God,
they're not. Those aren't getting torn down.
Yeah.
Those people want to keep them and we should allow them to.
Well, and a lot
to
of them are in
divide
the
it up into
heritage
suites.
registry, so there's restrictions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the ones that tend to get redeveloped are the ones that people have kind of maybe just let them go.
Yeah.
And let them go for too long, and they're kind of falling apart and rotting. And those ones, also the cost of those ones is down. So anybody who's looking to build something looks around town, right? They're not going to pick an expensive, beautiful place that's well maintained. They're going to pick the cheaper places that have fallen apart.
Which is kind
Those
of
are
like
the ones that happen.
serving a purpose in itself too.
Yeah.
Right? But not necessarily. This is where I guess the issue for my friend. See how I do?
Your developer
my
friend?
mysterious developer
Who shall
friend,
not be named.
who shall not be named. I know you know him, but is like all these layers of cost. So when you remove and then he's curious is why developers are pro, because some developers are pro the blanket rezoning, and he's like, you just can't make money as a developer banging wood together, like building, like you make your 15 points or what have you, but the real money was in the development, like rezoning component of it, which also kept a little cap on the value increases of the property. So there's always a value increase when you rezone it, because the use is now at a higher level, but now everybody gets that value. So now all of a sudden, say there's a $500K lift on a property by redeveloping it. Say it costs you $100,000 to redevelop, $150,000, and the developer's going to make $350,000, $400,000, where he might make $150K on the building of it. So his total profit might be $500,000 to $600K over a 2.5 year period, however long it takes. That's loose numbers. Now you've just given everybody a $500K lift who wants it. Because obviously you also have to want to sell it or have a property that's right to do it.
And so those spot rezonings, what you're talking about, and where the city upzones one property.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of that. I think we have something like 800 different zones in the city from this history of spot rezonings. That does raise the value of that property, and maybe some of the properties around it, if depending on the conditions. When you do the broader upzoning, doesn't have that effect because there's more supply now. Developers are going to look at, I got a lot of lots to choose from now.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't drive those prices up quite as much.
Yeah, it's not like you've just added 100 perfect lots.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does come down to those opportunities of, is it like, for instance, a large lot, large enough to put a bigger building on? Is it on a corner? Is it, going to have a lot of rock outcrops? There's a whole bunch of factors that come into it. No easy standard approach here. But on that point, the provincial and federal and municipal governments are all kind of trying to look at ways we can reduce construction costs. So everything from shortening the amount of time that your permit is sitting in the queue to approving standard designs. Like if you can have a range of different standard designs, kind of like the old Sears catalog houses that you can order, you can get the cost down. They're talking about sort of prefabricated in some instances. And when it comes to
that's
affordable
what they did
housing,
after World War II.
Yeah.
I mean, look at these communities in Kitimat where they built, smelters, and there's like 600 prefabbed houses. They built it up in 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
All the houses were just like boom.
Reduces the cost. It increases the efficiency, reduces the time spent. And so we're starting to see some of that in our affordable housing that's being built in Victoria. So there's a few examples around town that where you can find, and sometimes you can see these things getting built. They literally pick up, they build a frame, a structure at first, and then they have trucks come in with units, and they just pick them up with the crane and put them in place. And they're
They did that on
pre-built in a
Balmoral, right
factory.
beside Joe and Peter's place on Balmoral.
Oh,
Yeah.
And they bought that off of a company that was doing it in Kamloops.
Yeah.
My friend works for them, and I was asking, well, you must be booming. And he said, well, we kind of are, but there's a lot of competition now, I guess. But he's surprised at how little volume that they're getting. They have tons of capacity, which I guess is good news.
Yeah.
Right. So he's like, yeah, we had to lay off like a crew, like 30 guys because there wasn't enough orders coming in. So I thought that was interesting because I would think, and I guess maybe things will change now that the federal government seems to be interested in doing this type of prefab
well,
stuff.
the Prime Minister has announced that he wants to double the amount of housing getting built, which would be very welcome, I think, for a lot of people who are struggling, but also a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, what we see in Victoria, when I talk to shop owners, it's like, and I talked to some this morning who said, I can't get a cook in here at 5:30 in the morning because they can't afford to live here. They're living far out of town. There's no bus at 5:30 to bring them into town.
They can't afford a car. They don't have a car.
And they can't afford a car. Or some of them, if they can afford a car, are really struggling to because that's another $10,000 a year, which almost $1,000 a month. That's like when you add your housing cost and your transportation cost, it quickly becomes unaffordable.
Yeah.
So we really need to build that, build the housing here. We also need to build the capacity to build the housing. So the on-site firms, the trades, were short on people and companies, basically. So it's a little bit of a getting over the hump thing. Like we need to be able to house those tradesmen.
Yeah.
So that we can build the housing.
What came first, the house builder or the house?
I know. Hey, it's very chicken and egg here.
Can I ask you a question that is coming from someone who doesn't really understand? So
that's perfect.
So it'll be really easy for you to answer. Maybe there are 3 different levels of governance when it comes to housing: municipal, provincial, federal. The municipal, it sounds like, is in charge of like applications and what you can build where.
Exactly.
And once you clean that up, and it's easier for developers to come in and build things, what does the provincial and the federal government have to do with housing after that? If the ability to build something in a certain place comes to you, then what does the province have to do with it? And then what does the feds have to do with it?
It's a great question. And it's something that a lot of folks, when we were running the election campaign, weren't really familiar with. And why would they be, right? This is outside of everybody's realm of experience. But you're quite right. The municipalities are in charge of the sort of the where you can build it and what it has to look like and the limits on it and that sort of thing, and permitting it. The province,
sorry to interrupt, but would you say that was the bottleneck?
It was definitely a bottleneck.
Okay.
And I think it resulted in our current housing shortage, in the run-up of real estate costs, in the run-up of rents. And this brings us to the next player in your chain there, the provincial government, which basically had warned municipalities across the province, you gotta free things up, you gotta make things move quicker, you gotta allow more housing, and repeatedly said this, and said, if you don't do this, we're gonna do it. And so they ended up having to step in. So municipalities are the creation of the provinces. And so the provinces can change municipal legislation, and they did. So they made a lot of changes and said, guess what? You have to come up with housing targets based on your actual housing needs. And you have to amend your zoning bylaws to fit those targets and allow enough housing to be built. And so in this process that the city is in right now, and all the cities are in right now, we're adjusting our official community plans and our zoning bylaws to enable the building of the housing that's needed.
What was the holdup before? Was it that individual municipalities wanted to hold on to more of the character of of their homes?
The process is too
and-
long.
or didn't want to change? Or?
There's a whole bunch of things. Yeah, there's the motivation there. I think sometimes the motivation is good. Like in Victoria, when I talk to our staff, they're using the zoning system to make sure that the housing that gets built looks good and fits the neighborhood and is usable. Like it works for the people who are going to live there. There are other municipalities who really are more along the lines of, we don't want any more housing. Like we don't want any more people. So this legal structure that we have, where municipalities have the say on whether and what it looks like, can be used for different purposes. And then to your point, it's partly about the process going really slowly, like taking a long time to get a building permit, taking a long time to get a development permit before that. And then it's partly also about the rules themselves. Mm. So, if we're requiring like a 7-meter setback from the road and a big backyard setback and big side yard setbacks, and then height limitations, you're getting down to where you can really only build a single family home. Yeah. And yet you're using this huge piece of land for it.
Yeah.
So freeing that up a little bit and saying to owners, it's your property. We'll give you a little bit more freedom on what you want to build with it. So maybe you want to build a duplex. Maybe you want to build a fourplex and say, there's going to be a few families here. That's how we're going to be able to stay in the neighborhood that we love, is by sharing this space a bit better.
Yeah, and especially with aging parents. And I mean, we were looking at
multi-generational.
So we applied for a building permit, just to put into perspective on how, in my individual, point of view, because I'm just going through it. We applied for a building permit to build a garage with a suite above it. That's it. So we already have an existing garage, and it's not one you could park in, but that was going to come down, and we're going to build a 2.5 car garage with a suite above it, attach it to the house, and that was it. So we put that application in June, I believe, of 2024. We still don't have a permit now. Mm-hmm. It's effectively been approved. It was such a frustrating process. And I've done this before. I did a heritage restoration downtown Victoria like 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I've dealt with the city, and I also dealt with a different municipality, of course. I dealt with the city of Victoria versus Saanich. And again, my developer friend has a lot of developments that he's done in Saanich. So he's navigated that world. So we've had quite a few interesting conversations about what they're still doing that they technically shouldn't do. And, it's been really frustrating. So we've now been approved tentative, because we have some water, because they don't have a storm drain on our thing. They didn't know, the Saanich municipality didn't know they did not have a storm drain, because we sent all the drawings in and the plans. They kick back, you need to show where you're attaching to the storm drain. It's very frustrating. So there's 2 weeks gone. And something that they literally would have just looked at their plan and realized there's no storm drain, and then come with the solution, which was, okay, now you've got to get an engineer to figure out your water, where's the water going, and could your current system handle extra, drainage and whatnot. That took 3 months, because then now you got to go hire a new engineer, right? And they've downloaded, and it's frustrating. I used to be able to write like on a napkin a plan, and bring it to the city and go, this was like 25 years ago. And they're like, you can do that. We'll go inspect it and all that. And then they downloaded that responsibility to architects and engineers and that kind of stuff, which, okay, if you do that, then let them do their job, and then don't go and micromanage them. You know what I mean? Like, I guess if it contradicts a bylaw or something, sure. But because that process happened too. So the engineer did their thing, and they do it in all the municipalities across southern Vancouver Island. And they're like, here's what we recommend for this, and here's what we've done in other properties in similar situations. Their engineer in training basically came back with like a list, 15 items criticizing their plan. So that took another 2-3 weeks. And the engineer finally said, this is how we're doing it. Like, basically, get the hell out of here. Pound sand, right? Yeah. And we finally got it over there. In the meantime, the systems that they have was kicking back your license, or your application is expired. Your application is expired. So it creates a whole bunch of frustration. where you're just like, what do you mean our application is expired? You guys haven't got back to us. And it took them two months to get the initial, when we finally sent the final water stuff to them, it took them 2 months to get back to us. And then they said, oh, you have a week before your permit expires. And it's just like, and they give you 6 months. But then they've added all those layers of professionals that are in there that try to hire a professional in this day and age, because that's, again, a capacity. There's capacities all the way through the systems that are stretched because they don't have enough engineers at these companies or architects, and they don't have enough planners that are qualified, skilled to know what they're doing. And this is where, okay, well, if you're going to download this stuff, like something has to simplify. Because you can't have duplication at the city and at these companies. Yeah. And then the city has zero, financial liability, not zero, but once an architect or engineer stamps it, the liability all flows to them, but they seem so worried about it.
Well, isn't that why they require an architect and an engineer?
Really don't want to be absorbing.
But if you're going to offload it, then let them do their jobs, and then it falls on them. And then once you're in the inspection process, like obviously the planning is a key part of it, but once you're actually inspecting, then you can in real time deal with any issues that have come up.
Well, we've got in Victoria, we've got a person now assigned to kind of reviewing the whole development, permitting, and building permit process to try to smooth out some of those bumps. But I know that there have been other places in the world, cities and states, where the government has said, okay, we're actually putting a time limit on. We're going to put on, you got 3 months to do this one. You got 2 months to do this one. And I don't know if that's going to come to us with the sort of the increased push from the federal government. Oh, yeah. And so getting back to your point about the different levels of government.
Thank you.
Because we have to clean up all these.
I'm looking at you.
We have to clean up all these processes. In addition to sort of providing the legislative guidance for municipalities, the provincial government funds a lot of affordable housing. So a big important piece of the housing system, and it is a system. All the pieces are connected together. Is providing that affordable housing. So they provide the large majority of the funds needed to build affordable housing, and we're way behind on affordable housing.
It's hard to build affordable housing in an environment where the costs have escalated so quickly.
Oh, it is. Now you have to have, basically to make it work, and I talked to a lot of the sort of nonprofit housing providers, you have to have free land, like it has to be donated. And then you need the grants to cover the construction. And a little bit of your construction cost can be covered by rents that are coming in, but they're coming in below market, so you're not going to recover all of it from that. So anyways, the province does a lot of that funding. Another level of government which doesn't have a huge role in a lot of areas and is the regional governments. So we've got one here, Capital Regional District, and I sit on the board of directors of that one. And we've got an affordable housing corporation that we own, the Capital Regional Housing Corporation. I sit on the board of that one. And so we're in the same pickle that all the nonprofit housing providers are in of, we have to find the free land, then we have to get the grants. Often the land that we're using is land that we already own. So we're looking at, which of our, existing housing stock is, nearing end of life. And so we'll redevelop that. So we've got a few that are older, falling apart townhouses, that sort of thing, that we're going to be building at a much higher level of density. And then the federal government, I don't know what's going to be in the details of their plan. We haven't got a chance to look under the hood yet to see what it is. How are they going to double the rate of housing construction? I'm kind of hoping that there's federal financing, obviously, especially for affordable housing. Maybe make some of that financing conditional on municipalities doing a good job of freeing up their systems, their processes, and their rules to make sure that we're actually allowing
that type of housing.
Yeah. Exactly.
So instead of it being a year, it can go through in 3 or 4 months.
So it's a big sort of network of people pulling the sort of the laws and the policy levers, and then you've got the industry with its limited capacity, which hopefully we're going to be able to free up some of those bottlenecks too. I think that's going to require more of an immigration focus on the trades.
Yeah.
So our, to put it briefly and maybe not too accurately, Canada's been sort of saying, we'll take immigrants, but we want them to be rich or we want them to be doctors.
Yeah.
And so those are good things to bring in. Don't get me wrong. Let's bring in the money and let's bring in the doctors, but we also do need tradespeople to increase our capacity.
Well, and we have to bring in doctors that can practice healthcare here, not have to find other work until they can go through the education process again.
True. Yeah, we need to bring in the qualified folks. And then once we do that, though, we've got a job of looking at our credentialing programs and making sure that those actually fit for that, instead of being kind of barriers that we throw up to.
Well, it's kind of a similar problem as you have with the bottlenecks in all the bureaucracy channels, and even with the tradespeople, because there's a skill set that's required to do that, and Red Seal certificates, and everybody wants to protect their little world, right? So they can have control, and obviously there's reason they're there too, because there's standards that have to be kept up. But it's the same issue, is you need to streamline all of those processes.
It's true. And so it's going to take a while to get the housing that we need, right? Like we're decades
10,
behind.
15, 20 years probably.
Yes, exactly. So we've got about 1,000 homes per year being built in the city of Victoria. And
what's your quota? Like, is your quota?
We're meeting it.
You're meeting. Is that the quota? 1,000 a year?
We're meeting. Well, roughly. I mean, the province has housing targets, and Victoria is one of the municipalities that is meeting our targets. But those targets are pretty modest, and we've actually got a latent, what we call a latent demand. So an existing housing shortage of about 8,000 homes, just for people who are already here, that are underhoused,
right?
That may be couch surfing. Those, that family I mentioned with 4 kids in a 1-bedroom. So we've got to build those 8,000 plus another 1,000 a year. And so that requires a significant amount of ramping up. So you're right, it's going to be 10, 15, 20 years before we see the results. And in the meantime, a lot of construction.
Yeah, so there's a backlog of 8,000 plus 1,000 a year. And how much is Victoria growing every year? Like, what's the real demand for that? It can't be exactly 1,000. That'd be too coincidental.
It's roughly 1,000. Yeah.
Is it really?
It just happens to be. Yeah, it was 600 maybe a decade ago, 600 people a year.
Oh, okay.
And now it's more like 1,000. So that just happens to be where we are.
That doesn't feel like a lot of people, but it feels like a lot of houses.
That's a lot of houses.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of houses, not a lot of people.
Well, we've also got in the city of Victoria kind of a low occupancy rate because we've got a lot of singles. If you go out to
so we need
Langford,
dating sites. Get them coupled up.
Getting together.
Oh, we're missing the whole plot.
That's right.
Okay.
There's plenty of houses in the city.
And we can use restaurants to have the dating events, and we'll just Oh my God, I solved it.
Thanks, Phil.
Done.
Thank you.
Half the houses.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us today. That was.
I expect this to be on the next council agenda.
The dating app.
The dating app.
So hopefully we're heading in the right direction, but it is going to take a while on that one. But
and then to throw a fly in the ointment, we're going to have a exodus of baby boomers that are going to be giving up their properties, and now they're probably overhoused in a lot of cases.
There are a few of those,
Then what happens? Then we have a housing shortage and the bubble collapses. Like, it's a yo-yo.
Yeah. I wonder, there's going to be a lot of sort of intergenerational wealth transfer. So
yes.
Some of those folks are going to be handing off and they're going to have to, because fewer and fewer people now have pensions.
Yeah.
And kids are entering the workforce now knowing that, they're never going to have a pension.
Yeah. Their pension is their parents.
Is their parents' home.
Yeah.
And whatever piece of it they get. And if they can hang on to that for life, they're lucky. A lot of people are going to come up without that opportunity at all, and they're basically shut out of the equity market in housing.
My kids are unlucky because my house is my pension.
Really, and you're going to spend it all.
I'm going to spend it before I go. That's for sure.
Yeah. But I think that whole conversation too will add back some properties, especially when you look at the Schedule G or component of the bylaw where they can renovate. And so there'll be a lot of properties that are all these nice sort of, could be multifamily homes that are currently, under housed because they've got 2 people in it or 3 people in it or whatever. And these conversions can happen. So that's sort of like if we're not factoring in the age of our population and where they are in their life cycle to this mix, then we're probably undercounting those houses in over the next 20 years as well.
Yeah.
And
that's how cities evolve, right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at, they sort of evolve organically. There are places in the world where the housing construction style is, you build your first floor, you've got your family there, and then you've got another generation coming, you put another floor on.
Yeah.
You just put another floor on. And you see these in sort of older cities, you see them in Italy, lots of places. And I think we're going to have to kind of adapt to that. So we have some homes that have good bones where you can do that. And we have some that are just, kind of falling apart. But generally, what I think is going to happen and what I hope to see is that we have an increment each time in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard if one little spot develops and the other stuff doesn't, and this is how we've done it for the last 40 years or so, 50, 60 years even, is we've kind of had this unspoken bargain where, okay, we're not going to touch the residential neighborhoods. There's no extra housing going in there, but we're going to have a heck of a lot of density in the core of town. And so this grand bargain, as it's called, means skyscrapers in the downtown, and then everything else is flat. And that's a really new North American way to approach city building. You go to those European cities and you see 6 floors everywhere. And that happens to be the sort of sweet spot for affordability too.
Well, we have to grow up in Victoria because we're on the tip of an island. We can't go out; we'll get wet.
Yep. We got water on one side and Saanich and Oak Bay on the other. And we're basically landlocked. So we're not. Now the interesting thing is, though, even though we're landlocked, and we're putting more homes into this tiny little area. Over the last 10 years, we've added about 8,000 homes. And we've also added about 100 soccer fields worth of trees. So the tree canopy cover is actually increasing. And on Vic Map, the sort of City of Victoria mapping app, you can actually go on there and have a look at the different tree cover LiDAR maps for the last 10 years or so.
Oh, that'd be
and you can see each individual tree, like you'll see a dark green blob on this thing, and then a sort of a light green halo around it, which is just tree growth. And then you'll also see down the street a whole bunch of tiny little pale green trees, the new trees that get planted. So we're, we've got a tree protection bylaw. We've got policies saying, if you're building a big building, you've got to, first of all, replace all the trees that you have to cut down as a result, but also plant extra trees. And so we're actually, increasing our tree canopy. And we need to do this, right?
Oh, well,
especially as it gets hotter and hotter.
Yeah. I was talking to my daughter the other week, and we're out in Metchosin, so we're always in the West Shore, and all the hills in the West Shore have all been stripped down, and there's houses going up. And we were in a smaller part of town, and it was beautiful, trees everywhere. And she's like, you know what? We live in a great place, and I'm like, look over there, like that's where we're also living. And so I know it's not your municipality, but and I appreciate that Victoria's CRD. Yeah. But what's going on with the West Shore and those hills? They're not replacing all those trees in that location.
It's massive clear cuts out there.
It is.
I know that there's been some political evolution out there, and they're a lot more concerned about that sort of thing than they were, say, 10 years ago. But we also have a regional growth strategy. So in the CRD, that regional level of government, we've kind of got a plan that we've all agreed on, which is that there's an urban containment boundary. We're only going to build in that area. But even within that area, we're going to try to concentrate the development in areas that aren't, forests and clear cuts and agricultural land. We're going to try to keep it where transit can access it, active transportation can access it, that sort of thing. We're not doing too well on that. What we're finding with the data is that we haven't actually moved the needle on that one. So we're going to have to
which is interesting.
It is very interesting. We're going to have to look at the CRD level as to why that is. What's causing that? Now we've got so we're just starting that conversation because we've now got the data. And what are the levers going to be? I'm kind of hoping that in addition to municipalities doing their fair share on that stuff, and that includes Victoria taking more of that population growth and not sending it all out to Langford.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that the provincial and federal governments are going to step into that too and say, we're going to have to put some teeth into those regional growth strategies. So the province has, as you mentioned, transit-oriented developments. The province has said, okay, we're gonna designate some TOD hubs, and we're going to allow additional density around those. The city of Victoria is going another step further and saying, okay, in addition to those provincial ones, which we've only got one or two, we're going to designate our own ones. So if we've got a bus route coming down from Saanich and one coming in from Oak Bay where they intersect, that's where I think we should be allowing a bit more density. So we do have to sort of concentrate that development to keep it out of the farmland, and this goes into food security, right?
Yeah.
Which is a whole other topic for us, and you guys, I'm sure, are thinking about this constantly.
I'm growing my victory garden.
Yeah, Victory Garden. That's what we call Victory Garden. Yeah, it's the food security is something that we've even shifted our foundation resources to help bolster it and try to put money into areas that it's hard to farm. It's hard to grow food. It's hard to make money doing it. A lot of people that are doing it are really good farmers, but not great business people. So not that you have to be a great business person to be a successful farmer, but it's like the restaurant industry. You're scraping by, and then you have one event, whatever that event is. It could be most likely a climate event, and your crops are done, or they're reduced, or you're not getting the yield that you need to get to make the money, and then you're borrowing more money against your land, and it's this constant shuffle. And it's one thing, when we look back at farmers back in the day, that some of them were the richest groups in the communities they were in. They had all this land, they're able to leverage it, and then they sold all the stuff they could grow at high prices, and they had access to markets that could go, and the trains going by, all this stuff. Vancouver Island is an island, so it's not like we have trains going through, and we have to import majority of our food that we get on the island. So in the event of earthquakes, COVID, an attack from a neighbor, which back yesterday 2 months ago was inconceivable.
Yeah.
Where now all of a sudden it's completely
gotta be thinking about these things.
And I'm looking out my deck and going, I wonder if they're going to come up this or they're going to come up that way.
You won't see them coming in there Titan or Trident subs.
No. And, there's Air Force bases just across the water from us, and you're just like, hey, I don't want to even think about it, but we have to deal with it. So now getting into the mix of it. So we've already got a food scarcity issue. So, and nutritious food is another scarce part of that. So there's all these little levels of insecurity throughout our whole system, and distribution's part of it. Climate change is part of it. Gas prices, oil price, all this stuff is all part of the economics of it. And then you look at our integration with the U.S. economy. So we, as a country, import 80% of our lettuce, for example. We eat a lot of lettuce in Canada. We also have, majority of our land is frozen during the winter. So we're in a climate that we can, grow a lot of stuff throughout the year. We have spots where you can put greenhouses, but again, it's a land scarcity issue too. And when we had Alistair Howes from the Fed Urban Agriculture on a couple months ago, and he was talking, and also Tresca from the Mustard Seed, really great guests, and talked about the island used to produce 40% of its food.
Wow.
Now it's 10%.
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing that we're working on is urban agriculture, which again it's a scarce thing, but it's very easy to access. So Fed Urban Garden produces greens for restaurants. So we buy our greens in the summertime, obviously, which lowers. We only buy 10% of our food from the US, which is lettuce and tomatoes. But we're like everywhere else. You can't source lettuce and tomatoes. Very few lettuce and tomatoes are actually sourced in Canada. So, I think, we are kind of trying to figure out what our marketing strategies could be around that, because I think a lot of people just assume we get all of our stuff locally, but you cannot buy lettuce or tomatoes locally, not in the volume that we're
and it's hard to put kale in a burger.
Yeah, it's hard to put kale in a burger, right? So we were actually
massage it. You massage it.
Well,
first.
and
you have to make it limp.
There's capacity issues too.
Yeah.
So the farms that are growing the stuff, it would be really easy for them just to ship all of their lettuce to Big Wheel. But then what happens in October, November, December, January, February, that kind of stuff. So the tariff item, is going to add 50 or 60,000 to our bottom line. So lettuce and tomatoes they rotate between Mexico and the United States.
Yeah.
So when US isn't growing, Mexico is, and it's so integrated that we just press a button, click, and it comes. And so we're every different times of the season we'll know it's coming from Mexico or coming from the States. I didn't really know any of it until the tariffs were coming in.
Right.
And then we were like, okay, we better figure out what this is. And I was happy to learn that 90% of our products that we sell is grown in Canada, and most of it's grown in BC and on Vancouver Island. So that was good, but we still have 10%, right? So when you do, $8 million or $9 million a year in sales, there's 80 to 90,000 a year. Tariff at 25%, it's a sizable chunk. So, and some of our equipment too, like we cannot buy our grills anywhere but the States. They're the only ones that do the grills that we buy. There's 2 companies that make them, and we have to buy them from the States. And we're also trying to get off natural gas. So we're electrification. So we're buying new electric grills.
And
it's a nightmare.
I heard the food packaging is also being affected.
Packaging is being affected.
The U.S. has tariffs on aluminum, so we're sending aluminum to the States. It's hitting a tariff, which increases their costs. So the cans that they're producing in the States, which they sell back to us, are now more expensive. And so
we're
that's
tariffing them as well.
Hitting our
So it hits another tariff on the way back.
Yeah. So those retaliatory tariffs, and I get the need to do it. We need to deliver a political message in the States, and those retaliatory tariffs are aimed at Republican ridings where we think that the business owners and the political representatives are going to try to talk sense into Trump or the people around him more accurately. So they're quite limited, they're quite focused, but they are going to hit here. And there's a ton of cross-border flow that goes back and forth on any product. Like if you look at cars, it's like, all the parts of a car are going to go back and forth across the border like 20 times.
Yeah.
And each time it crosses, it just gets more expensive. So until this insanity ends, and that's going to be 4 years, maybe more. Who knows? Right? Like who knows what how bendable the U.S. Constitution is. But
they're testing it.
It's
pretty bendable apparently.
Yeah, and the courts are pretty pliable.
Yeah.
They're that whole system of checks and balances and division of power in the States turned out to be a bit of a mirage when you've got somebody who wants to be a dictator.
More importantly, having people around him that does, and also because you have to defend each pillar. So the Congress has to defend themselves. The executive branch does their thing, but the judicial branch, when you have the judicial branch so aligned with the presidential branch, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And then you don't have a Congress.
No,
like
they're
do
pretty
not
much...
have even though there's only I think it's a 6, like the swing, you only need 6 or 7 people to stand up.
Yeah.
You need 4 or 5 in the Senate. You need 6 or 7 in the House.
But they're, in the Republican
people.
Party, they're afraid that if they make him mad, they're going to lose their jobs, and they are.
But it's more. It's got to be more than jobs, because most of the people that are in Congress, not all of them, but are wealthy. So they've, some of them have been in there for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, and they've got pensions coming to them and all that stuff.
There's like direct retaliation happening.
There's the retaliation,
though.
That's
which I think is.
That's
scary. So I think in the meantime for Canada, we need to not only build those trading relationships with other countries where we're buying more Mexican, that sort of thing. I'm checking out labels. You guys have a much bigger problem than I have, but we're all doing our bit. But also, I think we have to build up our domestic capacity. So we'll need a lot more greenhouses here. For instance, extend the growing season. I think one of the most important things we need to do is stop the loss of agricultural land.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
We gotta stop.
That's where the housing and the ag
absolutely
collide, right?
Yeah. So we, in the sort of agricultural land reserve, we see people putting up housing that is, nominally a farm, but it's actually somebody's mega mansion, and they have a little stand out at the road.
We got some eggs.
But I think we have to be a bit more serious about that now. That may have been okay when goods and services could flow across the border easily. But now when we are going to be required to be more self-reliant, I think we're going to have to be a bit more vigilant about that and not convert that land into housing or industrial or anything like that. Like we have to make sure that the industrial land that we've got in cities remains industrial, and is actually used for industrial instead of like parking lots. And the agricultural land stays agricultural. And of course, we need those green spaces as well. I think we're having to look at everything different now.
Isn't it funny how
the last 30 years?
I mean, it's actually, I was just thinking about it while you were talking, that, and Mark Carney kind of alluded to it when he was in the White House, where he basically said you're a transitional, transformative president. And, now all the UN people, countries are upping their military budget as if it was like, because
good
of him,
job.
Like, we're like, oh yeah, good job, way to go. We're actually doing it to protect ourselves against you, right? So in this, it's like we need food security, for climate change, right? Yeah. And now we're doing it because of tariffs and a threat from the U.S. where we get a lot of our food.
This is the silver lining.
Yeah.
Is
so
that we're
go
gonna,
Trump.
We're going to gain a lot of independence. I mean, he's had impacts on our election results too, which have been, from my perspective, quite welcome to some extent. So, I think it is kind of and I think there will be benefits. There's going to be big costs, right? Like this stuff, we haven't even figured out how much of an impact this is all going to have. We had coming out of the COVID, we had a great sort of economic recovery going. We had great numbers on GDP growth and unemployment, and those are now going to be trending in a negative way. And it remains to be seen, because the news changes day to day, right?
Yeah.
Like it's how late is he up on Twitter, rage tweeting the next U.S. trade policy? All on his own.
Well, that's the thing, but he has control over trade policy.
Yeah.
Like, so his tweets and his truths, or whatever the hell they're called, actually have teeth.
I mean, Congress
until he backs out of
legally, Congress has control.
They do on the funding part of it, but they've ceded that part.
Yeah, and he's declared an emergency.
Right?
So
and they've also ceded their control over the budget. They control stuff they funded. They're and until they wake up, it's really not like, you can be mad at Trump all you want, and everybody knows I've been really mad at him for a decade.
You're pretty hot on social media. I noticed this.
Well, it's like sometimes, and I'm like, well, if I ever have to go to the States,
putting little hearts under all your posts.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, sometimes I can't look at something that's just stupid. Oh, and the stupidity is endless, because everything's easily fact checked in this day and age, where you can actually get actual information. Plus, people just don't have a strong enough understanding. Like what's happening in the bond market in the U.S. should shake everybody to their core. Because
the big one.
That is literally the end of the United States as a superpower economically.
When bonds, the dollar, and the equities are all going down on the same day, I think that's never happened before.
Never happened, and they've talked about these, divergent, stuff. And that is like, when people are selling U.S. Treasury bonds, like countries in mass, that is, and when China's talking, like the BRICS, because you've got BRICS as well. And people talk about all this BRICS. And before it was just, that's just, they're doing it, but they're not going to get any teeth. They literally, it's almost as if Trump he has been put in there to create the complete annihilation of the U.S. superpower as a superpower. And because it's all playing out exactly like that. So people are now trading. Saudi
You
Arabia
said
is trading,
almost as if, right?
it's almost as if. My eyes are rolling, side eye, sarcasm. It's exactly intended this way. Yeah. So Saudi's now trading with China in yuan
for oil. But they've been doing that for about 2 years, right?
Of course, because it's the BRICS.
Yeah.
Like, so Brazil,
BRICS
Russia,
is
India,
being bigger than
Saudi, China.
Yeah, they were kind of they got big between the Trump power elections.
Yeah,
like,
well,
so
they started
in the 4 years where Biden was
probably 12 years ago. This whole thing is all part of a concerted movement, like a concerted movement, not a conservative movement. But that's also maybe tongue in cheek, because there is a big movement to the right, and this all happened 80 years ago, 90 years ago, right before when Hitler came into power. Well, it's fascism, rise in fascism. So again, the book Fourth Turning. I don't know if you've ever read it, but read it.
What's it called? Sorry,
The Fourth Turning.
Fourth Turning. Okay.
I talk about it on this show all the time because it is essential reading to understand what's happening now.
So much so that I've had to read it twice just to keep up.
Yeah. I've read it. I read it originally in 1998 when it came out, and I was just in this mood to learn about science. And it's basically a socioeconomic type book, but it talks about how you hear history repeating itself. So basically it repeats itself, and they go back, they go back it's US centric.
Yeah.
They go back 600 years.
Yeah. To the Dutch, right? Is that where they start?
It goes all the way back, and it goes into Europe, and basically history just repeats itself. People get bored essentially. And then people that go to war never want to go to war again. So you have peace for 20 years. And then those guys get a little bit rambunctious, like in the 70s, 60s. Yep. So now they're in Vietnam and they're in Korea. And then those people. So people that go to war, they're the leaders. So 20-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds become the leaders when they come back. And they're like, okay, that policy creates stability. But then when they forget, then all of a sudden, their children and their children's children, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, fascism is the way to go, and anti-immigration and like this stuff it's like, oh, this is new. This isn't new. But knowing that, you can look and see the playbook, and it's just like it's like tea leaves. You just go, yeah, this is gonna.
I think a lot of people now never met a World War II vet. So I met a World War II vet, my grandfather. Yeah. And oh my God, the stuff he said and the impact that it had on him. Oh, like it was, and when I was growing up, popular culture, TV, movies still talked about World War II. Yeah. And they talked about fascism, and Nazis were generally regarded as a bad thing by everyone. Yeah. There was no universal. There were no Nazi fans. Yeah. When I was growing up. But yeah, we're far away from it. I'm as you mentioned books, we should do a book club. Yes. I'm starting one now called Abundance, which I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it's interesting. It's right. Put it in. Do a little Google research on that one. It's about basically we need to build things. We need to be that economy where we're growing things and building things. Yeah. What we've had, I understand the thesis of the book, is we've had a kind of a stultifying period where we've added rules and regulations, which are good things in themselves. Like they were all done for a reason. Nobody put red tape on something just because they love red tape. They make rules for good reasons. But when you just let them accumulate over time, and you don't look at the inter relationships between those things. And I don't want to go back to housing because we've already done it, but housing is one example of a lot of rules that just accumulated until the point where we couldn't build. But this applies in all sorts of sectors. We need to kind of simplify things a bit in order to kind of move forward. And this is going to become a lot more important in the Trump era when we're trying to build a Canadian economy. Quick. Yeah, so we want more east-west electricity flowing across the country, right? To provide clean power. And governments are now looking into, okay, so we've got a whole bunch of regulatory bodies along the line here. Is that what we really need to make this happen? Yeah. High-speed rail in California, same thing. They had a whole bunch of regulatory agencies along the line that put in like untold billions of dollars. not a mile of track has been built.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to be looking at the way we control things like that and just saying, the more important thing here is that we get that electricity flowing.
Yeah.
Now we're going to protect Indigenous rights along the way.
It would be nice to create some Indigenous jobs along the way too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, we're going to have to. This is one of those things that we're going to have to look at doing it differently now in Canada.
Now, what is your take? I'm just going to throw this out there, primarily because it deals with sort of the Pierre Poilievre sort of mandate in Alberta and what they're doing with separation. Not to talk about that because it's a non-starter because of the trees, but and just a waste of time. But
deliberate waste of time.
Deliberate waste of time.
It's happening at a time when there was a conversation going on about a scandal in the health ministry.
Yeah, of course.
Now that conversation seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, it's just like.
But anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
No, yeah, but interrupted in such a good way because it's such an example of where we are and what's happening with everything down in the States too, and even it's happening in Canada when it's just deflection, and they just create these little storms, right? But oil and gas to tidewater, gas in particular. So LNG pipeline in Kitimat is done. It's going to be producing soon. TransCanada, twinning of the TransCanada pipeline, which was bought by Trudeau in that period. But the threats of Russia, like Poland is militarizing, like they are anticipating war with Russia.
Jesus.
So that to me is like, okay, so Russia's a major supplier of natural gas. A lot of these, electrification obviously needs to happen, but it's also requires capacity, building dams and all this kind of stuff. I believe I heard a speech from Carney intimating like he wants to do this corridor that also going to include a possible pipeline that will go through I think the Bay of Fundy, like up into so they can get to Europe, and then sidesteps the Quebec issue, like if they do, because that's what there's a pipeline that goes already, it just flows one way, so and it just needs to be reversed, and I believe that, and there's a section that isn't built, and that's what got blocked, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something by the Quebec government, which stopped that. Obviously energy independence is a component to a climate plan. Obviously it's super controversial, just like nuclear, because obviously nuclear, we've already solved the energy crisis. We already invented nuclear, which could do it. But it's not popular. Oil and gas, not popular. Do you see, or would you support a gas pipeline that way to Europe if it was a part of a bigger strategy with this energy corridor that promoted electrification, windmills, solar perhaps, and all these other forms?
Wow, so far outside my bailiwick, I hadn't actually heard of it. So this is a pipeline to the East Coast, or are you talking like go north?
Yeah, it would go from basically from Alberta across Saskatchewan, Manitoba, then up into I believe it's the Bay of Fundy, right?
Hudson's Bay?
Hudson Bay.
Sorry, yeah, because you do have to go through Quebec. It's in Newfoundland.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
so it is.
I was wondering how you're going to sidestep Quebec without going down to the States.
That is so interesting. I guess with the forecasts of less ice in that area, in the Arctic Ocean.
Well, and that's why Greenland
is going to become a big shipping lane, eh?
Well, and Russia's already been planting flags in the Arctic. Like our sovereignty in Canada has been threatened by Russia for a long time because there's all these military incidents that happen. You don't hear about them that often, but if you
flyovers,
look it up, flyovers and submarines and things that happen, and they're planting flags even underwater, whether they're doing naval things because everybody is chasing. You don't need the Panama Canal if you can go trade routes to Europe, shrink, like all of those things. So
interesting.
And I think that has a lot to do with what's happening geopolitically too, especially how Canada becomes it, because we're sandwiched between. If you look at a map between Russia and the United States.
Yeah, and if you look at then China over on this
side. And China's over there as well. It's not very far off.
If you look at the globe, instead of looking directly on from the equator of the globe, if you tip it up and look down from the top, we're actually quite close to Europe.
Canada,
very close. Greenland, Iceland, Europe is.
That's why I was surprised that Trudeau seemed to just like discount Germany's. When I think the German chancellor at the time came over and basically said, "Hey, is there any chance we get natural gas from you?" And Trudeau said no. Said no, that's not. It's a non-starter. We're not going to be doing that. And I just thought, okay, in this day and age, like I get it. There's a. To me, it seems a little bit privileged because you still have people burning, manure to heat themselves and garbage to heat themselves in third world countries. And then we're like, oh, we're going to be off oil and gas. And I've been a climate supporter, like not supporter, but trying to be a change maker in that and carbon neutrality and moving to net zero and all this stuff. I am a believer in climate change. I just think that there is a number of bad actors in the oil and gas sector, and we're not going to be off oil and gas for the foreseeable future at some point, hopefully, but it's going to take a lot of investment. It's going to take a lot of time to be able to work that base load power. We're lucky because we actually have an abundance, a lot of water. We also have a lot of oil and gas. Yeah. So we have China that I don't think will be able to green their way out of what they need to skip. So all these bridge fuels, like biodiesel would be one of them. Natural gas would be another one. Needs to come from jurisdictions that have high environmental standards. Proximity. So it takes 4 weeks to get LNG from Houston, to China, for example, where it would take 2 weeks from Prince Rupert or Kitimat. Yeah. So that burns less fuel. It's quicker. There's a lot of reasons why that would happen. And if there's a route to go, obviously ice sheet dependent to Europe, because you can't do it 365 days of the year. Yeah. I think there is an argument to do it as long as the money and the taxation and all that stuff was right. Because at the end of the day, this is a taxation issue. Like in my mind, we have not taxed the wealthy enough. And now we're asking middle class and poor people to foot the bill, but also not only foot the bill, reduce their services, reduce, their quality of life. Meanwhile, these guys are still flying jets to Davos for their annual climate change.
And you mentioned jets. Like that is another thing we're going to have to think about, just context for the fuels discussion and different fuels going to different places, is that we're going to need to, there's some applications for which we will need fossil fuels forever. So flying is going to be one of them. So we've got these short haul electric flights between Vancouver and Victoria that are coming up with Harbour Air. That's great. Totally support that. But the long haul flights are going to have to be, and then you've got things like plastic production that requires natural gas as an input. So we're going to have to make sure that those use cases and applications that require the fossil fuels get them and can, for the foreseeable future, have them at a reasonable price. And I think where I'm more familiar with the domestic consumption than the European markets. But here we've got, especially in BC, we've got the opportunity to say, okay, all of our buildings here in BC can actually be heated with electricity.
Yeah, like capacity's there. And
well, we're building it too. So the provincial government put out, or I guess it was BC Hydro, put out a call for power a couple of years ago. For renewable power, and they said, here's the specs, here's how much it needs to cost, and they got bids for 3 times as much capacity as they said we need. And then we just BC Hydro again put one out just in the last week or so to more than double that, to provide basically a Site C worth of electricity, enough to power 500,000 homes. And if we're doing that every couple of years, then I think we transition the easy stuff, which is heating buildings and also driving cars. I'll get into that. Transition that easy stuff so that we free up those fossil fuels for the use cases that are needed. So on electric vehicles as well, and transit and other forms of transportation, that's another use where ground transportation doesn't really need fossil fuels. We've like I've got a plug-in hybrid car right now, and the gas part of it is for long trips. But already, just in the last couple of years since we bought it, there's a lot more charging stations along the route that we need to go a few times a year. So I'm now thinking we could probably have a straight-up EV and be able to get around. So, sorry, I don't know much about that export case. The other thing, though, that I have heard about exports of LNG to China is some uncertainty about what it's going to be displacing. So, the optimistic case is that it displaces coal.
Cool, yeah.
The pessimistic case is that it displaces Chinese or Asian LNG, or natural gas from pipelines, which just means we've added about a 30% energy cost to, because you have to burn some of that gas in order to compress it to ship it over. So it really depends, I guess, is probably the answer to those things. But that's way outside my expertise. Should ask Diana about that when I have her on.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
She might say, bring in Adrian Dix on that one. So
then
Energy
he'll
Minister.
say bring on someone else, and he'll say bring on.
Well,
and I
you
just
know
get
what?
to make
We're
up
gonna
stuff.
have
When I don't have the experts on, I get to just be the expert,
right?
of all of it.
We can do what we always do: make up the stats.
Make up the stats, and I'm sure I made up a bunch of stats, but philosophically, speaking,
well, that's what we got.
Yeah, we
the broader
philosophize here.
strokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we have to do this. Like you have to think blue sky, and you have to think how it's interesting times. So there's this ancient curse of may you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
And we are living in very, very interesting times. It's fascinating.
Not
to watch it.
unprecedented, but
No.
interesting.
No, because it's repeated itself
Yeah.
throughout
Yeah.
history.
Oh, yeah.
The exact same.
Yeah,
Go back
this
to
isn't
the-
unprecedented.
Go
Don't
back
everyone
to the
be scared.
1930s, the late 1930s in Europe. And,
Yeah.
and you see some parallels. I grew up thinking like none of this was conceivable even, but now we're having to conceive of it. So yeah, we do need to look at those off the wall solutions.
It makes it super interesting in some aspects. Like it's like kind of like the geek in me. It's tiring and exhausting as it is.
Yeah.
Like even through COVID, like trying to navigate all the different things. Like, and business kind of teaches you that as well. Where you need to kind of think on your feet and adjust and do things and, act with very limited information too. And I think that's where we all are in, is like, we don't have information because it's changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And so you've got to adapt. And I think that, it brings stress too, but it also is, I think it's very fascinating, especially if you don't get caught up with the emotional part of it. And I think, as a society,
being able to dissociate is a skill.
Yeah. Well, and I think about it is like, and again, going back to some reading I did probably 5 or 6 years ago. And some of it had to do with the transition with Trump and just the idiocy around their whole, how they do things and how they operate, and just that lack of understanding of how these government processes work. It's just like, it's totally out of our hands. So rather than worry about, and my poker background too, I can't worry about bad luck. I can't worry about things I can't control. So, but you get caught up and you go down these rabbit holes. So trying to distance yourself and getting off social media, right? Getting off that complete brain dump. Like when I was in Europe, I was barely on it, and there's an election going on, the stuff with Trump. And I just wanted to just like enjoy my time. So I didn't pay attention to any of it really. And then I came back and I've been to it a little bit more now, but it really helped me just break that dependence. And I've just been a lot happier and generally dealing with what's happening in my own backyard, seeing my staff, having conversations with you guys, and, just going out and seeing what's going on in my community, because everything happens here, that really directly affects you.
Well, it kind of goes back to being really present, and you're never present if you're looking at social media.
No.
You're always somewhere else in the
It's
summer.
Well, your
true,
brain
yeah.
is thinking about things
you're
that
not
you shouldn't be thinking about
right here.
because half of it is not, the world just keeps ticking on, and the truth of things, like the actual facts, don't change. You can say crime is the highest it's been ever, but if you look at data, it's the lowest it's ever been in the last 100 years. Climate deaths are the lowest it's ever been as well. So it's kind of interesting when you think about an existential crisis like climate change, and you think, oh, humanity could end. And it's like, okay, well, technology is going to cover. There's a lot of things that are,
a lot of
will not,
unpredictability.
but we're going to worry about, the world ending. And it's kind of like, well, it's all these stats, but we get just worked up, right? But it's not us. Like, people get us worked up.
Yeah, it's true.
Governments get us worked up.
The attention economy there, the little drain on everybody's attention. But that unpredictability, I think, also means that we need to kind of approach things in a different way. Like it's like we need to focus instead of on maximal efficiency. We may need to focus more on resiliency.
Yes,
we don't. You build these super efficient systems, and then you find out that they're very fragile.
Yeah.
So long supply chains that take products all over the world. You get one rogue country like we have south of the border right now, interrupts everything.
Yeah.
So maybe we need, even though it's less efficient, produce more of that stuff in Canada.
Yeah.
So there's been
that feels like it would be that it's not an efficiency issue. Like how does going back and forth and making big, long, complicated chains, how is that efficient?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think it's subsidized by the fact that we don't pay the full cost for transportation.
So
we're dumping into the atmosphere some of those costs, right, with those emissions. So it's kind of a subsidy to moving things around a lot. I agree. It's not terribly efficient. It's cheap, is what it is.
Yeah.
So it's
well, dealing with the different dollar values in each country.
Yeah.
And labor pools.
Pools.
Yeah.
So maybe we have systems that are more expensive, but are more resilient. So, we've been talking, some people have been talking about, and I haven't been part of this conversation, but maybe Canada's population needs to go to 100 million for us to be a kind of a more sustainable country. We've got these huge distances between our cities and that sort of thing. I can't help but think that conversation is going to be boosted by the craziness that's happening in the States. Mm-hmm. Like if we need to really be economically independent, we're going to need a lot more people doing a lot more stuff in our economy. Rather than having a cluster of cities on the U.S. border that basically trade with the U.S., we're going to need an actual vibrant,
and climate change is going to help
economy.
that because it's going to be more livable in the north.
Exactly. We're going to get great agricultural land in the frozen tundra.
This will be Florida of Canada.
Yeah. Once the tundra melts, we have lots of agriculture.
Oh, yeah. It's just beautiful.
Northern Saskatchewan property.
A good point. And I think that also speaks to the immigration issues and that. And I had a conversation with I have two brothers that live in Grand Prairie, and they both, one owns a business and one works for my brother that owns the business, but he works in the field. So he's working with, all these blue collar workers that, they work their butt off and people think everybody makes a ton of money up there. Like it's seasonal, break up. So, if somebody who would make 200, 300K a year based on their hourly, lucky to bring home 100K, which is not, that's a lot of money, but you're working in pretty extreme conditions. But he was talking about immigration, this, immigration, that. And I was like, he's been there for a year and a half or something. I'm like, you never used to think like this. Never used to talk like this. So what's going on? He's like, well, I just think they're taking our jobs. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk about why we have an immigration crisis. And it probably has a lot. And I said to him, think about demographics. Think about the baby boomers that produce a whole bunch of children, and think about all the different layers of people. It's a demographic problem. We don't have enough workers because there isn't enough people that are available to work, and also that want to work. But it's bodies. Like there isn't like there's a bunch. Sure, there's people going to school and their parents are richer, so they don't need to maybe do those jobs in the service sector. But in the actual trades, every aspect of the economy, there's no workers, and to me it's a demographic issue. And this is a period of time where we just have this a lack of people that are of that age and ability to work, and desire is part of it. But I think it's a very small part. It's easy to say that people, they're on the dole, or they don't want to work, or but there isn't enough bodies. You can't be bringing in this many immigrants as we have in the last decade and still have labor shortages and go, it's because of the immigrant. No, they've saved our bacon. And that's what's a big concern with me with food security because of the US and the deportation thing that they're doing. Like, it's insane. They're going to throw out like an entire, they're going to throw 2, 3, 4, 5, who knows how many million workers that are, working in restaurants, that are picking food, growing food, construction, all of this. Imagine if we did that.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, obviously I don't want to be talking forever, even though I do talk forever, is the issue that we're having, or we will have if we cut off all these immigration policies.
Yeah.
Obviously, we need to be smart about it because of the housing. We're dealing with like 5 or 6 different challenges right now.
Mhm.
But when you look at employment, and the thing that really frustrates me with this, and we had a podcast about this too, is that they changed the rules partway through.
Mhm.
So they didn't grandfather people that were on the existing rules and the existing point system. They changed the point system midstream. So we have probably 25% of our workforce, and we have 130 employees that are on the LMIA program. And it's completely the change in the last, I don't know when it changed, probably a year and a half ago, something like that, where they increased the point system. People have had to move to northern, Alberta, northern BC to ensure that they get the LMIA. Meanwhile, we've invested thousands of dollars in the employees. They have become critical parts of our organization and management roles and supervisory roles. And it's not like we could replace them. Like, there isn't a pool of people that we could replace them. It's getting a little bit better, but they're needed. And now the government changed the rules partway through, which really is frustrating for me. And I think it's like a huge mistake.
I just took notes on that. I'm going to be meeting with Will Greaves.
Oh,
so
Will,
another thing
yes.
Coming out of our election is that we've got an MP who's in government, or at least in the governing party. So I think Laurel Collins did a great job, and the NDP did a great job. If you look at things like pharmacare, dental care, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That was a really needed expansion of our healthcare system, and so kudos for them for doing that. We've got a slightly different flavor now. I met Will Greaves during the election. He's a really impressive guy, actually. And so I'll be meeting him tomorrow. So I will mention to him immigration and the LMIA as one of our needs. And in addition to what can we do for Victoria specifically.
I think that is the one thing I'm most excited about is having an MLA or MP, that is in government, where you could actually, the line gets a little shorter.
Yeah.
I mean, having a meeting with Laura Collins, great.
Then she has to try to persuade
she
a
then
different
has
party.
to persuade her party, and then also have a conversation with the governing party. So I'm excited about that. And for the first time,
you should have him on your podcast.
Yes. Well, when you talk to him, tell him this
list.
local podcast wants to have him
I'll
on.
add that to the list. Okay, bread and butter.
There we go. We've got Diana. We've got Will.
Yeah,
our guest list is
going to
growing.
become a political podcast.
We're going to have Carney in a minute.
We're gonna. There's maybe a couple this world is so small.
There's
like 3 or 4 connections, and you can actually.
I mean, you should get the guy who runs America and runs the world, according to his
Trump.
His opinion.
You know what? You probably actually could do something that he convince him that you're somebody, and then he would just talk to you. Like, you could probably get it.
You can dress
Signal
up
chat?
like Joe Rogan. I'll sell some supplements, and then we'll get him on.
Listen, we just get Signal Chat. We'll add him.
Yeah,
Donald J. Trump
and
Signal. Boom.
Maybe you're already on his Signal.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
Get Pete Hegseth. We could get some war plans dumped in our lap and go, oh my God, we're bombing the Hutus. What the hell?
Can I just add something to our conversation real quick about food security and the perceived labor issues that we have?
Yes.
I kind of think of most things in terms of coffee. And right now, coffee prices are not as high as they've ever been if you take into account inflation. We've been here before. But right now, the causes of it are very different. And I think they relate to why we can't find workers here to do lower paid jobs, including restaurant work, construction work, agricultural work, is because, like, when I hear people at the country of origin saying that they've got coffee cherries on the tree still, no one's picking them because they can't find anyone who wants to pick. So that's coming from the fact that the people who would normally harvest coffee, they're on the social medias now, and they can see that what they're doing is not being reciprocated, or they're not being paid like other people in the world for the work that they do. You can translate that from some other country in picking coffee to maybe a person doesn't want to be a barista anymore because it's not not the job that they want, and they see it as a lower margin job. Flipping burgers, same kind of thing. Like, how do you find people who want to do this when they're being inundated with the world is at your fingertips, and you can have everything, including this beautiful vacation to Bali, right? You know, like, you just see people on their Instagram living these fake lives, and everyone wants that. And they look at what they have to do that day. I have to go pick coffee. I have to go flip burgers. And they just don't want to do it anymore. And make coffee, and or go build a house because it's really hard, or work up north. It's challenging, and people want more out of life, and they're not getting it. And I think this is really
they're
where
getting misled by the influencer culture.
The promises out there aren't translating into, well, that's other people's dreams. It's not my dream anymore. So why would someone in El Salvador go pick coffee off the trees and get it to us so we can have a $2 cup of coffee? They don't want to do that. So sorry, that was a long way of saying I think the food insecurity issues we're having are because our farmers don't have anyone who wants to replace them. And who's coming to pick our food? Who's doing our work? How can we, if the states are going to send all their pickers back home, and we don't have enough people coming into our country to do it,
maybe we send planes there and they get loaded on the plane there, and we bring them to our wonderful country.
Oh, maybe the El Salvadorian prison is an agricultural education center.
Yes, exactly.
They're teaching all those new prisoners how to be farmers.
Yeah. I mean, we joke. I mean, these are human lives that are being upended. But I think it's incumbent upon us to provide some extra value too for them, because I think we've really worked in our business to try to provide a prideful workplace where they're happy to be working for us because of what we do for the community, how we treat them. And we're empowering them to learn a trade. I mean, this
is one of the big points behind Bread and Butter Collective, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, that is as our light goes down, you just pointed at it and it just went on. Our time, we're at 1:30. This is like time to 1:30.
You've been grinding, or you've been grounding out in the garden?
Yeah. You did it. Oh, magic. I'm the only one that can't do it.
Yeah, you haven't tried yet. You can do it.
I haven't tried. But as we wrap up, because we've got to wrap up, this has gone an hour and a half, but of great conversation. We've got to do a better job of countering that, you know? And I think that is incumbent upon us to do that, and not, I mean, it's like, I complain about everything, but I'd like to find solutions and like to try, because none of this is easy, but if they said it was going to be easy being in business, everybody would do it. So
is there space in municipal government to address those kinds of issues? It feels like it's a bigger issue, maybe, but
it feels big. I mean, I think we're going to try to do.
Diana can deal with some of that.
She should just do it all. I'll tell her. Watch
more notes.
Watch this podcast. I mean, we're doing our bit, I think, to try to get ourselves off of Twitter and that sort of thing at the city. Try to get out of that culture and have more genuine relationships with citizens and more real fantastic. Proper interaction. Yeah. So we've got our communication staff are looking at, can we phase that out, Twitter?
Yeah.
And can we have more outreach directly to, community associations and immigrant groups and folks who don't get talked with enough.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of those folks that you're talking about are feeling kind of isolated.
I'm sure.
And they look to social media for, validation, but they also end up finding a whole bunch of fake, influencer stuff saying you can be a billionaire too. And I think it's a really, it's just kind of toxic. So I'm looking for more authentic connections with people. So I like to do my things like go out and have coffee chats with folks.
I love
that. So I was up at your place and we had a little chat there, and I should do one at Bigwood.
100%. I'd love it.
Yeah.
Let me know when, and I'll be there too.
What the Vic West?
And Vic West is good. Gateway's good.
Has to be in the city.
Oh
of
yeah, that's right.
Victoria.
That's right. Vic West. Vic
It's
West
going
or
to be a
Cook Street.
Victoria one.
We got
We'll do
two, but Cook Street, Vic West. We have some.
No, I'll go down to Cook.
Yeah,
That'd
Cook
be
is good. We actually added
Yeah.
some outdoor little seating and stuff.
awesome.
And it's
probably
all
reach over
downhill
patio
on
one.
your bike.
Yeah.
That's right.
Uphill the other way.
But you'll be loaded up with good energy food.
Yeah.
True.
Energy. Yeah,
True.
love.
So
to
I think that kind of thing.
post
Like let's get back into more authentic connections with people and
having
and more
conversations, look
real
people
life.
in the eye,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
a very
this
different
is-
thing.
Oh, it's so different. And
Yeah.
then you can actually have, I had the longest conversation with one of my closest friends when I got back from my trip, and he had been down this rabbit hole, and he was never really. I've known him for 2 decades, and we've never really talked politics at all.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Oh, Mark Carney's this and that," and like negative.
Mhm.
And I was just like, "Okay, whoa. Like, where'd you get all this stuff?" And I've been down this road, and this is. Did you know he blah blah blah? And we just had like a 2-hour conversation, but we actually conversed.
Mhm.
We actually dialogued, and we weren't attacking each other. It wasn't
Mhm.
personal. It wasn't voices weren't being raised. At the end of it, he said, "I'm just really glad that I could have a conversation like this with you, where we just have a debate and discussion and share ideas."
Mhm.
And let's get back to that,
Yeah.
where you're not looking at them as the enemy, or like it's like like politics and religion has merged, and the passion that you have in your religion has now moved to politics, which is like insane to me.
Mhm.
Right? I understand how we got here, but
Yeah.
we need to backtrack it.
I've
And-
had I've had that similar experience where because of my job, people do sort of go on social media.
Oh
and
my god, attack you!
attack
it's
me,
crazy.
but it's I've said I generally say to them, okay, let's go for a coffee.
yeah,
And some of them take me up on it, and when they do, it's a totally different experience.
Yeah.
Like we find out that we actually agree on 95% of things, and we respectfully agree to disagree on the other 5%, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we're enemies.
Yeah.
It just means that we have different understandings of these few topics.
Yeah.
Which
it's
is
not-
healthy.
It's not the end of the world. It
It's
should,
healthy,
be
Dad.
like,
Well,
we
it's
do
the-
need that.
the
Yeah.
impact of 100% would be huge, but the impact on 5% difference is not that much.
Well, it's
Even-
like traction. You need something to hold on to move forward, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't have it 100% smooth. Otherwise, you're just going to
Yeah.
agree and not do anything.
No, but I mean
Yeah.
the actual outcome, like people think when you disagree, it's 100% on everything. So if your
Well, that's what
worldview,
social media does to us.
exactly,
Yeah.
your worldview would ruin the world and kill me and my
God,
children,
Yeah.
right? When the reality is you're
Yeah.
probably 2 or 3 percentages off,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's just that you're spending all your time talking about those 2 or 3 percentages. When you actually got down and looked at what your worldview was and what you would support, it's 2 to 3%.
Mhm.
And that's why I said to him, is like, if Pierre Poilievre gets in, it's not who I would want to get in. But if he's in, he's in, and I'm going to support him, and then hopefully we'll be able to work that way. Because the actual degree, like, I don't think he was ever going to end abort. Like, is there a potential? Sure. Could it happen? Yeah. And I'm glad the outcome that came. But it's literally, even with the environmental stuff, it was always, when you looked at the policies, it was only like 10%
Yeah.
different.
Mhm.
And is that going to, the 100%, if it's 100% different, it would be disastrous. But the 10% is workable.
Yeah.
Right. And the outcome difference is, but they want you to think that the outcome difference is
The
the end of the world.
algorithm
Yeah, the
tends
algorithm.
you towards
Exactly.
that conflict.
Which is,
Yeah.
let's get back to
Yeah.
dealing with the 5% difference and realizing that, okay, well, I can live with that. I can live with us disagreeing 5% or 10% of the time.
5% jazz.
Yeah.
We'd have more of that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 5% chance.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Dave. Anything else you wanted to add, or?
No, I just want to come back again and have another conversation
Yeah.
at some point. So let's stay in
100%.
touch.
I'd love it. And then I'll try to get Krista on again too. I want to kind of
Excellent.
get her
Yeah.
experience, and it's been fun watching you guys and knowing you guys going through this experience, especially
Yeah,
when I
it's
was kind of
interesting.
considering maybe doing a council run or maybe running for mayor or something.
Oh my
And
God, competition.
No, I'm just like, thank goodness we've got you. And you know what? I know you guys take a lot of bullets, but I just want to say the fact that you guys have to get up to speed with 15, 20, 30 different topics that are in your wheelhouse and then make informed decisions. And because you guys are so conscientious, you actually put the work in. And I want to thank you, because that's you guys aren't getting paid enough for the work that you do.
Well, nobody's getting rich, but it's interesting and fun stuff to do. Like I love being a generalist and learning new things, which is why I love our conversations.
Yeah.
So it's a good fit for me. Yeah, it's really a lot of fun.
Well, congratulations. You're doing a good job. You're representing us well.
Yeah, you're inspiring me to become the mayor of Metchosin.
Yeah.
It's going to happen one day.
Oh, Sam. Yes.
Bring
I'll
it.
be your
My financial
agent. That's right.
Yeah. I'll heckle.
Yeah. Perfect. You can heckle me from Twitter.
I'm going to get really good at it. I'll learn all the tricks.
Oh, I love it. Well, thanks, Dave. Appreciate you.
Thank
really
you
appreciate
both.
your time.
Yeah, good chatting with you.
And we'll see you soon.
Yep.
Right on.
Thanks, Sam. That was fun.
Calen, it's always a pleasure. And
Absolutely.
even more pleasure with nice people.
Yes. Well,
So-
we don't have any jerks on here.
No.
We need some jerks.
I know. That way we can just get riled up.
Yeah, we'll get riled, or not, or we'll just have a calm conversation and realize that.
Probably be disappointed and have a calm conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, oh, I thought
Oh, man.
we'll get some perceived jerks on, and we'll
Okay.
we'll test our theory.
Yeah,
We'll disagree
see.
on 3% of the things and agree on 97%,
Sounds great.
and realize that the world isn't ending,
It's not, and it won't.
and it won't.
All right. Well, in the meantime, until it maybe does, you be nice to everybody.
You be real kind.
All right.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, Bunny's Kitchen, Buzz Coffee House, Eagle-Ite, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Eva Schnitzel House, Farmsgate Foods and Catering, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles Inspired Catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.